Hello and welcome to the latest reading from the FPL Affairs Book FC playlist, the playlist that strips FPL back to help address those decisions that keep us awake at night. In our latest reading, we cover Matt Whelan's FPL General Principles from his book FPL Obsessed, with my own additional examples from a recent season or two. Before we get started, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel for all our content, and ring the bell to be notified each time we release some more content. Anyway, enough of my small talk, let's get cracking.
And there's Mo Salah. There goes Haaland. He's on his way again. He's hungry. He's scored. Ice cold precision from Palmer. Kayo Saka. That is a diamond of a goal.
FPL Obsessed, Tips for Success in Fantasy Premier League, written by Matt Whelan. General Principles. For the sake of your own sanity, you will want to kick off the season with some strong scores, and your initial squad is key to this. After 20 years of mixed starts, I have learned some general principles which can help get you off to a flying start. Pre-season analysis. When setting out my initial squad, one of my primary objectives is to reduce the number of players who won't start to as small a number as possible. This involves being as sure as you can that the player you are selecting is going to be first choice. A good way of doing this is to follow pre-season friendlies closely. Yes, some Premier League managers will use pre-season as an opportunity to fiddle and experiment with formations and systems, but largely, and particularly as the games get closer to the commencement of the season, they will start to reveal their preferred starting 11 and how they plan to use their substitutions. Not only does this give you a better chance of selecting players who will start, but it increases the probability of being able to identify what I like to refer to as the one. Finding the one. I define the one as that player who outstrips all expectations and is priced very low. Effectively, this is a player you buy as a bench warmer and soon end up playing in your starting 11 every week. The one is often a player who was played out of position, OOP, that is to say, incorrectly categorised by FPL, but this is not always the case. In the 2018-19 season, it was Aaron Wan-Bissaka at Crystal Palace, correctly categorised as a defender, while in the 2019-20 season, it was John Lundstram of Sheffield United. So successful was Lundstram's season, he earned the nickname Lord Lundstram and gained instant legendary status within the FPL community. By tracking the pre-season statistics, and there are a number of great resources available which will do the hard data graft for you, it became abundantly clear that not only was Lundstram seemingly a first-choice player, but Chris Wilder was also playing him in midfield, despite FPL categorising him as a defender. I did not know this because I have an encyclopedic knowledge of championship teams, but because I did proper research during pre-season. Although no one at the time could possibly have predicted just how solid the Sheffield United defence would turn out to be in the 1920 season, the prospect of a £4 million midfielder who was nailed on to start and who could pick up both clean sheets and 6 points per goal was irresistible. Without pre-season analysis, I wouldn't even have known who John Lundstram was. As it was, I did my homework and had him in from the very beginning. Pausing the book for a moment, I'd probably say the one. Over the last couple of years, you'd say in 23-24, it would be glaringly obvious that it was Cole Palmer. And last season, I would say Morgan Rogers is probably the most likely, although in the latter part of the season, you'd argue Daniel Munoz of Crystal Palace because of him playing so high up the pitch. Anyway, spreading the risk. As the season progresses, you will get a feel for which teams are worth doubling or even tripling up on. After Project Restart in the 1920 season, I tripled up on 3 Manchester United assets and they made a devastating trio. Often all 3 would get me returns in the same match, assisting each other and practically rolling around in the bonus points and throwing them in the air with glee. At the beginning of a season, however, putting all your eggs in any one basket can be risky. The barren summer months can do strange things to teams, whether it be new signings, tactical changes, or perhaps just the lack of football abruptly halting a team's momentum. A team will often start out very differently to how they finished the previous campaign. If a team is going to flop at the beginning of a season, you don't want to own 3 of their players. Instead, spread the risk across as many teams as you can. If a team is firing on all cylinders, then you can start to phase in more players from that team. If a team has got off to an awful start, then you only have 1 player to shift out. I'm not saying you should aim to have 15 players from 15 different teams, but try to limit the number of double-ups to a few and steer clear of triple-ups altogether until the season unfolds. With all that said, and as we will discover later in the book, there are always exceptions to these general rules. Before the 21-22 season kicked off, Liverpool's Andy Robertson picked up an injury, which was to see him sidelined for the opening matches of Liverpool's Premier League campaign. My thoughts went instantly to Kostas Tsimikas, who, at the time, was the most likely alternative to fill in at left back. I checked out his price, which was £4 million. This was an absolute gift. A £4 million defender for one of the best defences in the league, who just happened to be effectively drilled into playing in an advanced role. As I considered this move, it became apparent that the online FPL community was also mulling it over, with Tsimikas featuring in more and more drafts. For me, there were 2 problems with bringing him in, one general and one personal. First, the danger was that any surplus cash generated by downgrading a premium defender to Tsimikas, for many this was Robertson himself, would be redistributed amongst the squad, and then, when Robertson came back from injury, which turned out to be earlier than expected in game week 3, the route back to normality would be difficult. The second problem, personal to me, is that I was acutely aware that this was the season after I had launched this book, in which I stated, as above, that managers should steer clear of triple-ups altogether in pre-season. As I already owned Salah and Alexander-Arnold, I couldn't bring in Tsimikas without going against my own advice, which, for obvious reasons, I didn't want to do. I resisted bringing in Tsimikas until the very end, but it kept nagging at me. To bring the Greek fullback in, Ben White, 4.5 million, would have to make way, and then Lewis Dunk, 5 million, would be dropped to the bench. This would mean, aside from the aforementioned benefits, I would also strengthen my bench with a better option. Also, because I was switching one budget option for another, I wouldn't have surplus cash to squander and therefore box myself in when Robertson came back. As long as I switched Tsimikas to another budget defender when the time came, I wasn't creating a problem for myself. The only reason not to do it, therefore, was to avoid being contradictory. This started to feel like I was about to waste a golden opportunity for the wrong reasons. If I hadn't written this book, then there would be no issue after all. In the end, I brought in Tsimikas just before the deadline. Ben White went the other way, and Dunk dropped to the bench. In game weeks 1 to 2, Tsimikas scored 17 points. White and Dunk got 1 and 8 points respectively. When I heard that Robertson was back in contention earlier than expected, I shifted Tsimikas out for Tino Livramento so that the value gained from the initial transfer could be captured while ensuring I had a regular starter providing bench cover. I shudder to think that I almost didn't do this because I was worried about what I had committed to paper. As always, there are exceptions to a rule, and if FPL ever presents you with a gift, which it so rarely does, then think hard before turning it down. Reliability. It may seem boring, but there is great merit in selecting players, particularly your premium players, who have a proven pedigree in FPL. Players like Mo Salah, the departing Kevin De Bruyne, and previously departed Harry Kane have shown that they can be points magnets consistently over a number of seasons. You will find such players at various price points and in most positions. Their total points from previous seasons can be found in their player profile. Of course, any season could be the season a particular player stops returning points, as we saw with KDB in the 2021 season and Harry Kane in the 21-22 season. But generally, you are in safer hands with a player with a consistent history. Don't avoid players because they play for rival teams. Many managers avoid players because they play for a rival team, and they can't quite bring themselves to own players from a team they loathe. Imagine this. You're an avid Everton fan at the beginning of the 21-22 season. You are planning to go the entire campaign without owning Salah or Alexander-Arnold. I might not go as far as to say that this is FPL suicide, but it is putting yourself at a severe disadvantage. It may be that your feelings on the matter are so strong that owning these players will literally ruin the enjoyment of your FPL season. If this is the case, then don't bring them in. As we will discover later in the book, enjoying FPL should be your number one priority. But you should do it knowing full well that avoiding rival players is likely to be suboptimal. Set piece takers. Find out who takes the set pieces for each team and factor this into your decision-making process. If a team has a guaranteed primary penalty taker, then this player will earn points, even if a different player did all the hard work to be awarded the penalty. Likewise, free kick and corner takers will have an increased chance of goal involvement. If it is a toss-up between two players, then why not go for the one who takes the set pieces? Managers will often use the summer break to change their set piece takers, so if you are bringing in a player because they were on penalties last season, do some research to ensure that this is still the case. This is another good reason to do your homework in pre-season. Breaking from the book, summer 2025 right now, Bryan Mbeumo has expressed, reportedly, the desire to transfer to Manchester United from Brentford. At Brentford, last season, he was regular penalty taker and heavily involved in other set pieces. Moving to Manchester United, Bruno Fernandes is on penalties and is heavily involved in set pieces. The problem is, if Mbeumo does get the transfer he wishes, reportedly, will he be as much of an appealing player for next season if we don't know his situation and the Manchester United situation with set-piece takers. Anyway, avoid disgruntled players. This actually also sticks with Bryan Mbeumo for myself as an example, is depending how keen he is to move to Manchester United, if the move does not go ahead because United can't reach a deal with Brentford, what frame of mind is Mbeumo going to be in mentally at the start of the season, the 25-26 season? Could this be a repeat of, well, returning to the book, as those who selected Harry Kane at the beginning of the 21-22 season will fully understand, selecting a player who is disgruntled with their club prior to the season starting can be an expensive risk to take. Kane's publicly expressed desire to leave Spurs, his disappointment when he was not released to join Manchester City, and his subsequent decision to extend his family holiday, meaning he rejoined his training duties late, was well documented and there for all to see. Despite this, a surprising number of FPL managers, just shy of 1 million, still included him in their Game Week 1 squad. He went on to blank in 12 out of his first 13 fixtures. In the challenging and demanding Premier League, players must be at the peak of their physical and mental prowess to succeed. FPL managers should be wary of any disgruntled players until evidence of good form dispels that caution. Common traps to avoid. Number 1. Seeking instant gratification. It is, of course, possible to be too eager for a good start. With limited free transfers, covered later, your initial squad will form the backbone of your FPL campaign. It is important to appreciate that you and your squad are in it for the long haul. I have seen many managers make short-term decisions for short-term gains and then spend the next 6 game weeks falling behind because what looked like a great squad for game week 1 was actually an awful squad for the 5 subsequent game weeks. Number 2, looking too far ahead. As with most things, it is also possible to go too far the other way. Don't get overly concerned with a bad clump of fixtures which start around game week 6. There will be plenty of time to tweak your squad gently between now and then so that you can avoid the bad patch. Likewise, I wouldn't advocate having a player in your initial squad who is injured or liable to be rotated just because at some point they will be better. Strike a balance between points 1 and 2 and set up your initial squad with the first 6 to 8 game weeks in mind. Number 3, taking chances on unproven players. There are usually a couple of new and exciting summer signings who are high-profile players from elsewhere in the world, who have never played in the Premier League. As we await the arrival of the 25-26 season, we can already see FPL managers getting excited about the prospect of having Florian Wirtz and or Tijani Reinders in their Game Week 1 squads. I call this shiny new toy syndrome. The quality of the Premier League should not be underestimated. It stands apart from any other league in the world. The competition is fierce. If a team in the relegation zone beats a team in the top 4, it is certainly surprising, but it is not unheard of in the way it is in other leagues. Naturally, players joining the Premier League can take time to adapt in their maiden season. Compare Timo Werner and Jamie Vardy at the beginning of the 2020/21 season. Werner, an exciting new prospect from the Bundesliga, was £9.5 million, and Vardy, the previous year's Premier League Golden Boot winner and consistent returner of points in FPL, was £10 million. Vardy, despite his proven pedigree, was owned by just over 1 million managers. Werner, who had had a great season for RB Leipzig but had never played in the Premier League, was owned by over 2.8 million managers. In their first 6 appearances, Werner scored 29 points, average of 4.8 points per game, compared to Vardy's 55 points, 9.2 points per game. When Timo Werner first joined the Premier League, he was interviewed and asked how he was adapting to the Premier League. He commented after Chelsea's opening game against Brighton that he had never played against such big defenders before. Excuse the accent. Yeah, Premier League is different football because I think defenders, I have never played against 3 defenders like this, so tall, so big, massive defenders. The week after he made the comment, he was due to face Virgil van Dijk. Some players adapt incredibly quickly to the Premier League. Names such as Luis Suarez and Bruno Fernandes spring to mind. But for most, there is a period of bedding in when they are not at their best. Don't forget that for a non-UK player, it is not just the Premier League they have to adapt to, but a totally new lifestyle. Quite often, these players are moving country, finding new schools for their children, having to learn a new language, and find a new home. These are all significant life events, and while these players will have the support and finances to make the transition easier, it will still take its toll on a person. The first 6 game weeks are where, as managers, we will face the most problems. Find out how a season is likely to play out, and take note of which players are firing and which players are flopping. Why then, during this already volatile period, would you want to add an unknown factor into the mix? Namely, will this player adjust to the Premier League instantly or not? It is always nice to be first to a bandwagon and get points which others have missed out on, but I think it is much better to allow others to pioneer the risky routes first. At the beginning, stick to solid, reliable, and proven options. As the season progresses, observe other managers and judge their success before jumping on a new craze. You may miss out on a couple of game weeks of points, but you may also dodge a bullet. The same can also be said for world-class players who have been away from the Premier League for a while and are making a return. Early in the 21-22 season, Premier League fans from all over the world, and particularly those from the red half of Manchester, were thrilled by the shock signing of Cristiano Ronaldo from Juventus. The ramifications of this signing sent shockwaves through the FPL community. Managers who were still getting to grips with the new season suddenly found themselves with a significant decision to make. Do you dare to go without, arguably, the greatest player in the world, or do you put your transfer plans in the bin to bring him in for game week 4? This decision was further complicated by the fact that many managers were also scrambling to bring in Romelu Lukaku, who, after a phenomenal season with Inter Milan, was now the new Chelsea frontman, and many argued the missing piece in an otherwise perfect jigsaw. For various reasons, I decided to stick with my team and opt for neither, electing instead to target Lukaku when Chelsea's fixtures turned in game week 7. My main reason for not going with Ronaldo was that I wasn't convinced Manchester United was set up to accommodate the new Cristiano Ronaldo. Juventus built their team around Ronaldo and relied heavily on feeding the Portuguese legend with service from the wings. Indeed, the stats showed that Juventus topped the tables for deliveries from crosses of all Serie A teams. Manchester United, however, were not set up this way. Much of United's attacking threat came from the likes of Marcus Rashford, who prefers to cut inside and shoot rather than cross. Aaron Wan-Bissaka, to put it politely, is not renowned for his crossing ability. The inclusion of Ronaldo would inevitably dampen Bruno Fernandes's goal potential, which seemed counterintuitive, given how prolific he had been in the season before. While I could understand why United fans were excited, I wanted to see just how tactically minded and adaptable Ole Gunnar Solskjaer was before ripping my team apart to fit Ronaldo in. My reluctance to bring in Ronaldo was almost instantly punished when he scored a brace in his debut game against struggling Newcastle United. He also bagged a goal in the next game week when they faced West Ham. After that, my prediction came true. Manchester United looked awkward and sluggish, a team without a plan. This led to a string of awful performances and ultimately cost the manager his job. Ronaldo went on to blank in 14 out of his next 19 matches, a poor rate of returns for a £12.5 million forward. Likewise, Lukaku, who admittedly had less time to prove himself, only returned in 2 out of his 7 appearances. Even world-class players with proven pedigree in the Premier League can find themselves struggling when suddenly dropped into a team which has since moved on. Take note of your first proper draft. Once my team is registered and the squad auto-picked to get a low ID, I set aside some quiet time when I can properly focus on my squad, knowing I won't be interrupted. This time is spent removing all the auto-picked players and replacing them with the ones I want. At this stage, I am doing it freestyle, not really looking at fixtures or stats, but instead trying to shape the team using my instincts. I will have spent all summer thinking about which players I want for the season ahead. Now it's time to see if I can fit them all in. This first draft is not constrained by detail. It is bigger picture thinking. It is my gut feel speaking. Now, as we know, the final draft will look very different from this initial draft. We can't ignore fixtures, and it may happen that the midfielder who you've had down as a lock in your mind actually plays for a team which starts the season on a really difficult run of games, and perhaps it would be best to bring him in when the fixtures are somewhat kinder. Also, the transfer window will still be open, meaning players will come and go. Players may get injured in pre-season or fall out of favour with their team's new manager. All these things will have an impact on your decisions, and so they should. But I advise everyone to do 2 things. First, put the stats and fixtures away when you initially have a play with your squad, and let your intuition guide you to create your first proper draft. Second, take a note, screenshot, sketch of it before it gets lost in the torrent of changes to come. It has been scientifically proven that instinct is the result of highly complex and unconscious analysis of large amounts of information. We might think we are clever, delving into stats and analysing fixture difficulty, but the forces which inform our latent intuition are a lot smarter, and they are certainly worth listening to. If you get towards the game week 1 deadline, have tweaked your team to oblivion and feel unsettled and unsure about it, and this sometimes happens, then go back to your first proper draft and get some inspiration from it. Okay, Matt Whelan's general FPL principles in summary are: number 1, making that pre-season analysis; number 2, finding the one, so by that meaning perhaps a defender that's playing out of position as maybe a midfielder or a winger at a low price as well; number 3, spreading the risk, so instead of going triple up on some of the stronger teams, go single or double up at the most. He doesn't mean 15 players from 15 different clubs, but just be mindful until we know which clubs are going to come in on form. Number 4, reliability. Yes, there are these various different players coming in, some that will be exciting and some that not, but look mostly for a solid start, getting in those players that have a decent FPL Premier League record. Number 5, don't avoid players from rival teams. So, for example, Everton fans, don't deliberately avoid getting in Liverpool players just because they're Liverpool players, and likewise Sunderland fans don't avoid purchasing Newcastle players just because they're Newcastle players. Number 6, set piece takers over pre-season and past seasons. Who are the penalty takers for clubs? Who are on free kicks, corners? And if you've got 2 players that are at a similar price point, if one's on set pieces for their club and one isn't, then veer a bit more towards the set piece takers. Number 7, avoid disgruntled players. So perhaps those are players who have wanted to try to get a move and it hasn't gone through, or perhaps there are alternative reasons they may be upset, perhaps change of manager and they're playing in a different position. Number 8, common traps to avoid. Seeking instant gratification. So by that, you may get a player in your initial squad that's got a first game week or first 2 game weeks that are really good fixtures, but then the next 4 or 5 are really difficult. Second other trap to avoid is looking too far ahead. So mainly stick to the first 6 game weeks roughly, or 8. Don't start looking into game week 12 or beyond that. And finally, taking chances on too many unproven players. So yes, you've got any big names that are coming in from abroad, but don't necessarily get them straight in. Let some other managers take that leap, and if you miss out a couple of weeks, tried and tested, that's fine. You won't miss a huge amount. Like for example, last season I kept an eye on pre-season. Chelsea got in Nkunku. He had a really solid, good pre-season. Looked like he was starting, so I got him in instead of Cole Palmer. And first game, Nkunku was benched, and then second game as well. So I then had a fire to burn out by replacing him. So yeah, concentrate primarily on proven FPL players. That's what I focus on doing. And finally, take note of your first proper draft. That's the draft you make after the game's released and what the value of each player is. Anyway, that's the summary. The next video we're going to release will be on managerial player styles, and by that mean it's how us as managers play the game. And finally, if you like this video, please click that like, subscribe to our channel, and therefore you'll get access to all our videos. Click the bell, notifications to every time we release new content. I'll stop rambling. Keep an eye out for our next video. Bye bye.